This video is brought to you by Devout Decals, makers of reusable Catholic art for your home altar, your bedroom, and your home classroom.
The Marco Rupnik story has taken a weird kind of narcissistic turn, and this is happening as more and more Catholics are looking into the story. And I'm talking here about investigative journalists from across the internal church divide spectrum. Marco Rupnik has, sort of in a weird way, become the great uniter in the church, putting Jesuits and traditionalists on the same side of this one issue. He has truly done something that even Pope Francis himself could not do. He's united the church on this one issue. People are asking some really weird questions, like why does the Vatican keep using his artwork at every possible turn? Why is there a debate in the church right now about not tearing down his artwork? There was the rector of a cathedral recently said, hey, we're not going to tear down the artwork. We're just not going to put lights on it. Great. So for time immemorial, his evil artwork, because it is evil, it is unsettling, and it is evil, will be there as a constant reminder for everybody that the church doesn't take seriously when evil sins of the flesh are forced upon nuns. Great. Good job. Wonderful. But all this is happening while people are looking at his artwork and finding some odd things in it. And they're also looking at his connections, which for an explanation as to why his case hasn't moved forward. For instance, it was just announced the other day that they've been investigating him for more than a year and nothing has happened. They don't have enough to go on yet. Incredibly. Remind you that once they started the process against Archbishop Vigano, they moved very, very quickly. Almost as if that he was their priority. Almost as if there was some reason they wanted to silence him or discredit him. Meanwhile, Rupnik, who's been investigated for a year now, they don't have enough to go on, so they're just going to keep kind of looking. They're going to keep looking until we forget about him. But the story takes a weird narcissistic turn, and it does so in this. We go to Crux Now, a Catholic news site that professes to be taking the Catholic pulse, for this headline. Rupnik art dispute more nuanced than it seems, historian says. Yes, there are now art experts coming to defend Marco Rupnik and some of his weird things that he does. Sometimes in history, artists will insert themselves into their own art, or they'll put people they really dislike into their art. Probably the most famous example of this in the church is Dante placing a pope he did not particularly like into like the seventh circle of hell or something in the Inferno. And this has been done before, but oftentimes in history you will get artists will paint sacred imagery and then hide themselves in the image somewhere. And Rupnik does that here, which is weird, but he's not the only person he placed in there, which is gets what makes this all the weirder. So, from the article, quote, as accusations of grotesque evils of the flesh have mounted against Slovenian Father Marco Rupnik, his art has come under a microscope, and recently attentive observers noted a curiosity. The face of the artist himself, along with two of his closest friends and allies, appear in an obscure section of perhaps his most famous work, Rupnik's giant mosaic in the Vatican's Redemptoris Mater Chapel, sometimes dubbed the Sistine Chapel of the late Pope John Paul II, according to an inscription above the door, was installed by the Rupnik-founded Rome-based Centro Aleti in 1999, and blends Eastern and Western motifs in depicting the history of salvation. Rupnik, 69, whose famed murals adorn chapels and cathedrals around the world, including inside the Vatican and at the Marian Shrine of Lourdes, is accused of doing evil deeds of the flesh to at least 30 adult women, many of them nuns belonging to the Loyola community he helped found in his native Slovenia in the 1980s. In a small corner of the sprawling work, three figures are depicted in white robes, who upon examination, some say bear striking resemblances to the late Czech Cardinal Tomas Spidlik, Rupnik's great patron, shown holding a set of books. Natasa Govakar, a member of the Centro Aleti, who today serves as a department head in the Vatican's Dicastery for Communications, depicted with a laptop, and Rupnik himself, holding a painter's easel. End quote. And there's the image here on the screen for you, so you can take a look and see for yourself what we're talking about here. I don't have an opinion on the bishop either way. Pray that he did not know anything about what Rupnik was doing in his private time, please, because helping somebody hide those kinds of deeds is itself a great evil, a great sin, one that may very well cry out to heaven for justice. I want to focus here on the other person, Nataska Gavacar, I believe. Govacar. You see, the article attempts to make all of this seem normal, citing a few famous artists who weren't monsters, who've done this with sacred art. But here we see Rupnik placing his two patrons. I count Natasha as one of his patrons, and he places her in there with him as well, which is weird by itself. You see, most noteworthy in this case is his dear friend, Natasha. She's department head of the Vatican Dicastery for Communications. Among other things, Govacar runs the Vatican News website. She's the person most directly responsible for his abominable artwork on the Vatican site on holy days and saints' feast days, like Vatican News did on the feast of St. Irenaeus in late June. LaCroix International, in fact, again, this is a definitely modernist or left-leaning Catholic news outlet, but they also noted that it was a little unseemly to put Rupnik's artwork on the Vatican News site on a feast day, on a feast of a holy saint, at a time when the calls are growing from across the church to remove Rupnik's artwork and to make sure that he faces justice for what he's done. LaCroix International took a deep dive looking for an explanation for all of this, and here's what they have to say. Quote, there's a section on the Vatican News website called Saint of the Day, which presents the models of Christian faith that the Catholic Church celebrates on the liturgical calendar. The page includes an image of the saint and a few lines on his or her life as a way to encourage readers on their journey of faith. Over the past several days, there were short biographies of St. Cyril of Alexandria, bishop and doctor of the church, St. Jose Maria Escriva de Balgar, founder of Opus Dei, and on the 28th of June it was St. Irenaeus of Lyon, whom Pope Francis recently proclaimed the latest doctor of the church. But the image that was chosen to depict St. Irenaeus was a mosaic created by Marko Rupnik, and it immediately raised questions. Rupnik, of course, is the Slovenian priest who has been expelled from the Society of Jesus after having been found guilty of spiritual bad things and sins of violent sins of the flesh against several women in recent years. They don't say this, but including nuns. A number of people on social media contested Vatican media's decision to use his icon, and the Dicastery for Communication quickly removed a post on Twitter that featured it, but not for long. Minutes later, someone in the Dicastery reposted the image, an indication that the Vatican's media officials are locked in a debate over what to do with the artist's work. In fact, the Dicastery's pastoral theological director, Natasha Govacar, is a member of Rupnik's community at the Aleti Center near the Basilica of St. Mary Major. John Paul II founded the center in 1993 to foster links between East and West, and it is here where the Slovenian priest has his mosaic workshop. The members of his community, which the Jesuits ordered closed in mid-June, wrote a letter a few days later contesting Rupnik's conviction. They've accused the Jesuits of, quote, promoting a media campaign based on unproven and defamatory accusations. Internally, several sources interviewed by LaCroix denounced a, quote, conflict of interest that would force the Vatican media to provide a minimum service on this delicate matter. In the last few days, a meeting attended by some of the Dicastery's top officials concluded that there was nothing to prevent the continued use of Rupnik's mosaics. They said the work should stand on its own merits and be disassociated from the personal life of the artist. The Jesuits, for their part, feel that they have done all they can to expel the famous mosaicist from their ranks, but not everyone is pleased. The Vatican doesn't get it, one of them lamented. This has got to stop, end quote. Yes, the Jesuits are the ones in the right on this. They expelled him from their order, declared that he had automatically excommunicated himself from the things that he had done, and they kicked him out of the Jesuit order. It's more than the Vatican's done. In fact, Pope Francis lifted his excommunication. You see, he coerced nuns into violating their vows of purity and chastity with him in ways that I can't bring myself to say, let alone could say on this platform, but I can't bring myself to say it anyway. But he did that, and then he got them to confess their sins to him in the confessional, and he absolved them of their sins, thus earning him an automatic excommunication. Francis lifted that excommunication. Great act of mercy or something. And the Jesuits are the ones on the right side of this. But you know who they're joined by? Again, this is why this is taking kind of a weird turn. Bishop Strickland. Yeah, Bishop Strickland has stood up and said no more to the Rupnik artwork. He's one of the few bishops still acknowledging the Rupnik problem. A few days ago, I covered how Cardinal O'Malley also stood up and did the right thing. Again, notice how people are being unified on this. And Bishop Strickland responded to the story that I covered about O'Malley last week. Not to my story, but he responded to Cardinal O'Malley itself. Bishop Strickland congratulated Cardinal O'Malley for his courageous public demand for the destruction of Rupnik's art. He did this on Twitter, and where he said, quote, Rupnik art must come down. I applauded this stance of Cardinal O'Malley, and I'm grateful that he had the courage to speak out against the blasphemous art of this scandalous priest. I pray that his plea may be heeded by authorities in the Vatican. May the Church once again be the sponsor of beautiful, inspiring art." End quote. Because Rupnik's art is anything but beautiful or inspiring. It certainly inspires revulsion in people and a sense of dread. I've heard a lot of people's testimonies on this ever since I started pointing out that there was something very deeply troubling about his art depictions in general. And people have said that they've seen them in person, and yes, it's very unsettling to see them. And so Bishop Strickland is absolutely correct here. The Church used to be the great patron of beautiful art, and one day we can pray that she is again. That's not all he had to say, though. He also said the following, also on Twitter, quote, "There should be no delay, no debate, no consideration, no compromise. The Rupnik atrocity should be removed immediately from all Catholic sites, and apologies issued to the women harmed by Rupnik. Anything short of this supports evil." End quote. And he's correct. Again, this is the Church endorsing him, but continuing to keep his artwork up. Yes, it will be expensive to remove and replace them. But I have a feeling the laity, if told in a proper way why they were taking these down and why they needed money, donations, to put up new, more classical Catholic art, would do so. I have a feeling that would happen. Let me know what you think about this in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help, so does sharing this on social media. That helps a lot too. And as always, pray for the Church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.